a spinning globe slows over North America. The camera dives toward the continent. Forests, plains, mountains, then cities burning with electric light. Some nations are old trees, grown layer by layer over ages. America is different. America is a blade it forged for itself, and then spent the next centuries learning how often it would cut friend and enemy alike. Today, I speak of the United States of America. Before America, the First Nations, wide shots of plains, forests, deserts, rivers. Indigenous art ghosts into view. Before there was a United States, there were many nations here, hundreds of peoples, thousands of years. Haudenosaunee, Cherokee, Apache, Lakota, Navajo, countless others. They were not primitive. They had law, diplomacy, warfare, trade, and spiritual systems shaped by this land. They lived with cycles of alliance and conflict like any world I have walked. But their future would be crushed beneath a new arrival. Europe, colonies and conquest, birth under empire. Ships roll out of the fog, flags of Spain, France, England. Disease, guns, and crosses overlay the map. The first great wound came with European empires. Spanish, French, British, Dutch, they came for land, gold, resources, and advantage. Disease killed millions before battles even began. Treaties were broken. Tribes pushed, used, divided. Along the eastern coast, 13 British colonies sprang up. Farmers, traders, enslavers, religious exiles, opportunists. They did not yet think of themselves as Americans, but this land was already changing them. Revolution, the idea of a new order. Drums, a quill signing a declaration. Smoke over redcoats. In the late 18th century, the colonies rebelled. Taxation, imperial control, and the belief that a distant king had no right to rule men who shed blood on their own soil. They declared independence with words that Earth still recites, that all men are created equal, even as many of them held others in chains. The American Revolution was both noble and hypocritical. It was a revolt for freedom led by men who, in many cases, denied that same freedom to others. Yet the idea mattered. Government by the people, not by a hereditary crown. That idea became a weapon, not just a dream. Expansion and the frontier, freedom and fire. Maps of the U.S. growing westward. Buffalo herds vanish. Soldiers, wagon trains, factories. After independence, the young republic did not rest. It expanded relentlessly westward. Land purchases, wars, treaties made and broken. Mexico stripped of vast territories. Native nations pushed aside, confined, or annihilated. Americans told themselves a story, manifest destiny, that it was their fate, even their duty, to spread from ocean to ocean. In my world, conquerors cloak hunger in destiny. America was no exception, yet the same expansion also drew in millions of immigrants, those fleeing famine, poverty, oppression, seeking a new start. America became a contradiction, a land of opportunity built on dispossession, slavery and civil war, the internal cataclysm, cotton fields, chains, then cannon fire, smoke, and torn flags. At America's core was a poison, chattel slavery. Millions of Africans were enslaved, bought, sold, and worked to death to fuel the economy of this free republic. Eventually, this contradiction became unsustainable. The nation split, North against South, Union against Confederacy. The American Civil War was more than a battle over territory. It was a brutal reckoning over what kind of nation this would be. The Union prevailed. Slavery in law was ended. But hatred and hierarchy do not vanish with a signature. They simply learn to wear new masks. Industry, immigration, and empire. Factories surge. Crowded cities. The American flag in Cuba, the Philippines. After the war, America raced into an age of steel and smoke. Railroads stitched the continent together. Factories devoured coal. Immigrants poured in Irish, Italians, Jews, Chinese, Japanese, Germans, Scandinavians, and many more. They built the nation's wealth, often in dangerous conditions, for little pay, under the eye of ruthless industrial barons. At the same time, America looked outward. It took overseas territories, Puerto Rico, Guam, the Philippines. A republic that once defied empire now tasted the power of being one. This duality defines America. It calls itself the defender of freedom, while pursuing its own interests with the focus of an apex predator. World wars, arsenal of democracy. Black and white footage turns color. Troops, tanks, mushroom clouds. In the 20th century, 2 global wars reshaped Earth. In both, America entered late, but decisively. Its farms, factories, and soldiers tipped the balance in the First World War. In the Second, America became what they call the arsenal of democracy, supplying weapons, vehicles, and men to crush fascist regimes. It also unleashed a power that changed history. The atomic bomb, twice dropped on Japanese cities, both ending a war and announcing that humanity now held its own extinction in its hands. After these wars, America stood as one of 2 superpowers. The other was the Soviet Union. A new conflict began, not outright war, but a Cold War. The Cold War, fear, power, and identity. Missiles, red maps, civil defense drills. Protesters in the streets. America reinvented itself as the champion of freedom against communism. It built alliances, bases, intelligence networks. It fought proxy wars and covert operations from Asia to Latin America. At home, fear took root. Fear of nuclear annihilation. Fear of subversion. Fear of the enemy within. Yet this era also forged new technologies, satellites, rockets, computers, and a powerful national myth that America was not just another country, but a necessary one. In the shadows of this myth, not everyone shared that freedom. Black Americans, indigenous nations, and others still faced systemic oppression and violence. Civil rights and unrest. The 1960s crucible baseline history. Marches, police lines, MLK at a podium, cities in flames, counterculture crowds. The 1960s were America's internal earthquake. Black Americans demanded rights long promised, but rarely honored. Leaders rose, voices like Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, and many others, calling the country to face its own hypocrisy. Streets filled with protests. The war in Vietnam split the nation. Youth questioned everything: war, race, gender, authority, capitalism, the very definition of American. In any timeline, the 1960s are when the mask cracks and the raw face of the United States is exposed. That is true in your base history. In this time of age, something else enters the stage. The 1960s were the crucible that remade America. The civil rights movement demanded the nation honor its promises. Black Americans faced police brutality, segregation, institutional violence, and they pushed back with marches, boycotts, speeches, sacrifice. Leaders rose: Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, Fannie Lou Hamer. Leaders fell to bullets. Meanwhile, the Vietnam War dragged young Americans into jungles far from home, a conflict many did not believe in, fighting enemies they did not understand. Students marched, cities burned. A generation questioned everything: government, authority, morality, race, gender, war. America was not one nation in the 1960s. It was dozens of nations sharing the same land and arguing over its soul. 1960s EARD timeline, when the galaxy pulls back the curtain. And in the EARD timeline, another truth arrived in the 1960s, a truth no American was prepared for. Earth was discovered by the galaxy, not in whispers, not in distant speculation, but through covert contact, classified sightings, crashed probes, intercepted transmissions. Sith agents infiltrated global hotspots, stirring conflicts already burning hot. Republic observers analyzed American military capability with guarded curiosity. Mandalorian scouts tested Earth's defenses and found fears, if primitive, resolve. Washington, Moscow, Beijing, all scrambled to understand which off-world power would become allies or enemy. America entered the galactic stage, not by choice, but because the galaxy refused to ignore a world bristling with nuclear weapons, ideological zeal, and sheer potential. America in contact, Ronderou's analysis, high-security bunkers, NASA centers, Pentagon war rooms. America reacted as it always does, with division, innovation, suspicion, ambition. Some saw aliens as the threat that could unite humanity. Others saw them as tools to gain advantage over rivals. And some feared that off-world powers would undermine sovereignty. Your military tested alien alloys against tank armor. Your intelligence tracked Sith movements like Soviet spies. NASA wondered whether rockets could be repurposed into planetary defense. America became a nation standing on a threshold between human conflict and interstellar destiny. The contact is not yet public, but its shockwave runs silently through America's institutions. Generals debate how to fight wars where the enemy can cross the stars. Intelligence directors wonder whether their greatest foe is still Moscow or someone orbiting a different sun. Politicians weigh alliances. A democratic but fragile galactic republic. A disciplined but cruel Sith empire. Cartel powers like the Hutts who treat planets as assets. And within America itself, questions sharpen. If there are countless worlds, what does American exceptionalism mean now? Is the Constitution an artifact of one world, or a template to negotiate with the galaxy? Some argue we must lead. Others warn we might be the ones who need protecting. The American character, through Ronderou's eyes, still frame on an American soldier in jungle fatigues, then an American protester, then a factory worker, then a native elder, then a black activist. I have fought beside Americans. I have watched them joke in the face of artillery, argue about politics in the middle of combat zones, and cling to principles even when those principles cost them dearly. They are not a simple people. There is arrogance, yes, a belief that their story is central, their pain unique, their mission righteous. But there is also a capacity for self-critique I do not see often in empires. They produce dissenters, rebels, whistleblowers, activists, and storytellers who tear at their own myths. They are a nation of contradictions, founded on liberty, scarred by slavery, champion of democracy, sponsor of coups, land of opportunity, and of systemic exclusion. In the EARD era, that contradiction is not resolved. It is magnified by contact with the wider galaxy, America in the larger war to come. The map of Earth zooms out into a galactic map. Possible lines of alliance flicker, unstable. As the decades advance, the United States will not remain a mere spectator. Its soldiers will learn to fight beside alien allies and against alien tyrants. Its scientists will attempt to merge blaster and bullet, hyperdrive and jet engine. Its politicians will argue over treaties that span not just oceans, but parsecs. America is still deciding what it wants to be in a galaxy that does not care about its myths, only its actions. Closing words, a Kalish verdict. Ronderou, silhouetted, staring at footage of American history on a hollow wall. From its beginning, the United States has been a self-forged weapon, hammered from ideals and blood, ground against the stone of its own sins. It is dangerous. It is inspiring. It is deeply flawed. But it learns whether America becomes a shield for the weak, a blade for the powerful, or a danger to itself and others. that remains to be seen. I do not trust nations that claim purity. I pay attention to those that admit their failures and keep moving forward. America is still moving, and in a galaxy that devours the stagnant, that may be its greatest strength.